we're going to want our ship to be able to fire lasers as we're flying along through the game. Now to do that, we're going to need to know what is the laser that we're bringing into the scene. So we can't just use the laser that's currently in the scene, because that one's going to be flying off to the side, and we don't really want to do that. We want to make this a prefab that we can use over and over again. So we'll go to our prefabs folder, and we'll drop our player laser in there. Might as well drop also the asteroid in there while we're here, because we're going to want to reuse that object over and over again as well. And now that we've got the player laser in there, I'm going to delete it from our scene, and we're going to go to our player, and I'm going to right click on him and create an empty child that we're going to rename to be fire point, and this is going to be the point in space where our lasers are going to shoot out of. So I'm going to move this so it's a little bit in front of our ship, like that, so that our lasers will fire out from just in front of the ship and go towards our enemies. So now that we have that, what we need to do is go and add the ability to fire our lasers into our player controller script. So we'll open that back up over here in Mono Develop. We've got it over here. Now to be able to fire the lasers, obviously we're going to need a reference to what is the object that we're going to fire. So we're going to say public game object, we'll just call it the bullet. It's nice and simple. I usually kind of stick to the naming convention of no matter what game I'm making, if we're firing something, it's a bullet. Whether it's an arrow, a laser, an actual bullet, or a rocket, it's easier to just keep it generic and keep everything referred to as a bullet. So we have the bullet that we're going to fire, then we have the space that we're going to fire our bullet from. So we'll say public transform bullet point. So that's where we're going to fire our laser from, and that's pretty much all we need as a reference to when we're firing. So how are we going to check and see how we're actually firing our bullets? Well, we basically need to check and see when our player presses any button that we want to use to fire our weapons. Now we could set up that to be a specific key, like we could set it to be one of the keys on the keyboard, like J or something like that, or the player to press enter or press space, or we could also set it to be a specific mouse button that we press. But what we're going to use is the button system that we used for moving our player's input. So when we looked at that, if we go back to it again, we go to edit and project settings and input. If we look at it again, we have some other buttons over here for fire 1, which is, it can be like left control or the mouse button down 0. We have fire 2 and all of this stuff. So we have some options, and again fire 1 also will work as on a controller. It'll be the A button, say on the Xbox 360 controller, or it'll be the X button on a PlayStation controller. So we have those options available, so let's take advantage of that. So we'll go back into our script, and then down below here we're going to say if input dot get button down. So when we're using these inputs over here, we're checking for a button being pressed. We're not checking for a key being pressed. Whereas previously we've used get key down, now we're using get button down. So when we say input dot get button down, and the button we want to check for is fire 1. Oh, I needed an extra bracket to close that there. Fix up these indentations. There we go. Okay, so we've got our input.get button down fire 1, which is absolutely perfect. And then in here, we're going to run a simple bit of code to make our bullets appear. So we'll just say instantiate, and then in a bracket we say the object we want to instantiate, which will be our bullet. We want to say where it'll appear, which will be at our bullet point dot position. And then we want to say what rotation it will have, and that will be bullet point dot rotation, like that. Okay, so we'll save this, pop back in here to Unity, and we'll have to, of course, hook up those things that we created on our player. So we'll go to our player here, scroll down. We see we have a slot for our bullet and our bullet points. So let's put the fire point in there. We'll go to our prefabs, and we'll put the player, oh, we lost it here. We'll put the player laser into our bullet slot. Okay, so now if we play the game, what we should get is whenever the player presses the mouse button down, we can fire lasers, which is great. Now we can actually do some damage in the game, and now it's starting to feel more like a real game and more like we're actually doing something as we go. But what about the fact that I've just shot off loads and loads of these bullets, and now if we look over here in our hierarchy, there's loads of copies of the bullets left in the game. So if I just pause this for a second, when we're here in our scene view, if I just click on one of them, if we zoom out, all those lasers are still in the world. They're just flying off to the right forever and ever and ever, and we really don't want that to be happening. If we keep doing that, we'll have so many lasers added up over here, and it'll just end up with our game slowing down massively. So that's no good to us. So what we're going to do is make sure that they're automatically destroyed as soon as they leave the screen. And there's a very, very simple way to do that. What we can do is go into our bullet controller, and then down the very bottom here, we can just say void on became invisible. And we put some brackets and then some curly brackets. And basically this on became invisible function is a function built into Unity by default. It's not one we're creating from scratch now new. No, this is a built-in one that basically just checks if any object is no longer visible on the screen. So basically if it's gone off the screen altogether. There's also on became visible, which is for when an object first arrives on screen, so you could do stuff that way. But when our lasers become invisible, i.e. when they leave the screen, we're just going to say destroy game object. So it'll just destroy the laser, so we don't have to worry about it anymore. So we'll save, we'll go back into the game, let it compile, and now when we press play, we shoot our lasers, they go off the screen, and as you can see now, over on the hierarchy, over on the left here, our lasers, as soon as they leave the screen, are being destroyed, and we're not being overwhelmed with loads of them in our game. So that's perfect, but you'll also notice, you could probably hear it there as we were playing the game, to fire loads of buttons in a row, we have to keep jamming on the fire button down, we have to keep pressing it, and we have to keep trying to go crazy, and eventually your finger's going to get tired. So rather than making our players have to press buttons over and over again the whole time, let's make it so that they'll automatically fire in a repeated kind of fashion.